and let's look at today's topic is memory and storage. Again, this is something that you can get through and make a lot of marks early on. They're going to start off with system architecture, they nearly always do, and then they crack on with memory and storage, okay? Just one word to bear in mind is characteristic, which is what something is like. And we'd learnt a little mnemonic that I'll come to later on in my group for all of those characteristics that you've got to describe, in terms of capacity and portability and durability, those sorts of things. And the common types of storage that you need to understand are optical, magnetic, and solid state. So we'll go through all of those and think about all of the different sorts of questions they could ask you in the exam. And then we'll do a bit of a quiz at the end. That is the grand plan. That's going forwards. Let's go on to this one here. Okay. Nothing seems to be working today. Right. Primary storage, RAM and ROM, the purpose of ROM and the purpose of RAM, what they do. Actually quite straightforward, but this does sort of form a story of how memory is used. So let's jump in and see how much of this we can get through. They always ask, look at my red arrow pointing down there, they always ask why computers have secondary storage. It's really important that you can demonstrate why they have secondary storage, that you understand why, and also what primary storage is used for. Okay, so let's go on to the next one here and do our little teach. So let's start off with RAM. RAM looks like that. You've all seen RAM. And what are its characteristics? It is built into the computer. It has, the CPU has direct access to it. And this means that the CPU has got fast access to data and instructions. And of course, those are the two things that are being held, data and instructions. Hence the data register and the, we've got data and instructions, and then we've got the address of where it is, okay? So RAM's got limited capacity, and we'll get on to virtual memory, what happens when RAM gets full. And RAM has got no moving parts. So that's why RAM tends to be expensive, because it's very fast memory. And when you buy a computer, you end up spending a lot of your money on the RAM. The processor is probably the most expensive bit, about a third of the cost. And then after that, RAM tends to be quite expensive, especially if you want more of it, and especially if you want high quality RAM. So let's now look at ROM. Did I actually say the thing that's most important here? Well, the main characteristic of RAM is that it holds all of the data and instructions currently in use. That's kind of really important. Then we look at ROM. What does ROM do? ROM is a tiny chip, and I've actually got a picture of some ROM down here. It looks like a little electronic spider with many, 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 many legs. And ROM is a tiny little chip that holds some really important programs. First of all, it holds the basic input-output system there, and that checks to make sure that the computer's functioning properly. Is there RAM? Is there an operating system? No, it doesn't check that. Is there a fan? It just checks to make sure all the hardware is there. And once it's checked to make sure everything's there, that an operating system could be run, the next thing that happens is that it runs the bootstrap program, which is this guy here. And the bootstrap program's job is to load the operating system, which, when the computer's turned off, is sitting in secondary storage, and it loads it into RAM. Okay, so that is how that works. So characteristics of ROM. Obviously the ROM, I mean, you all know this. ROM means read-only memory. Now notice underneath there I've put cannot easily be written to. So it can be written to because it's called flashing the BIOS when you do it. You can update the BIOS, but it's something that you don't go into lightly. You need to make sure that you can actually you need to make sure that you know what you're doing with that, because it is very easy to completely muck up your computer doing that. Not that I speak from personal experience, but it is remarkably simple to do, so just bear that in mind. Okay, so it's non-volatile. In other words, the contents aren't lost when the computer's turned off. They will check to make sure you know what volatile means. So volatile means that if the computer's turned off and there's no power going to the memory, it'll get erased. Like RAM is volatile, so when you turn your computer off, everything in RAM disappears, okay? It just vanishes. So this idea of the two types of primary storage, RAM and ROM, Okay, so inside your mind palace is primary storage, RAM holding everything that you're doing, all the applications, all the data, and ROM, which gets the computer started, holds the BIOS and some firmware for the motherboard, and also holds the bootstrap. Okay, good. I thought I put this on there because this is the most important thing to know about RAM, which will appear in every single exam. It's that magic phrase there. It's hold the data or programs currently in use. You can just say hold the programs currently in use or currently being used, okay? So RAM stands for random access memory. And random access memory because it's a different technology to your magnetic hard drive. It's just a different technology altogether. So the reason it's called random is because data can be stored or accessed from any memory location within the RAM chip. It's volatile, we've covered that before, so the contents are lost when the computer's turned off. They often check to make sure that you know that. And the other thing is they like to ask a question about the impact of having more RAM. Well, it means you can run more applications simultaneously, and other than that, the processing performance is improved by increasing RAM. So if you want to speed your computer up, improve the processing performance, more RAM always helps. And we'll kind of come to why that is when we talk about virtual storage. So often it's easily upgradable, although manufacturers like Apple have become quite cunning, and they make you buy all of your RAM up front so you can't upgrade it afterwards, which is a bit annoying. If anyone's got any questions, just chip in and I will push on with that. Okay, so now we're coming to the last part of primary storage, which is virtual memory. Virtual memory is something that comes into effect when RAM is full. So when you've got no more space in RAM, it's at 100% capacity. So all the data and programs you're currently using, they have already filled RAM. Well, you need something else. So if RAM's full, you then use your secondary storage device. Now I've put one down here, which is a magnetic hard drive, an HDD, a hard disk drive, a disk because obviously this is a disk just here. Let's do that one. That's your disk. So it's quite an effective system. So it means that once RAM's full, because you need more RAM, because you want to hold more data, you can use your secondary storage. The problem is there are all sorts of problems. The first problem with using your secondary storage as RAM is that it is much slower, and it's slower for two reasons. First of all, because you end up with slower read-write speeds. When we consider reading and writing, what it really means is reading is opening and writing is saving. So when we say read-write, that's what we mean. To write data to the disk, to save data to the disk, and to open data to look at or do something with, right? So when you open an application, it's got to be read from the disk. So reading and opening, we tend to be lazy and say you open a file, but it's actually being read, okay? So it's got much slower read-write speeds than RAM. And of course, you pay more money for higher read-write speeds. When I went from having a computer that had one of these devices for secondary storage, a hard disk drive, and I moved to a solid-state drive, I couldn't believe how much faster it was. Loading went from being a couple of minutes to being 20 seconds, like a phone. Your phone's a solid-state storage, and they boot up almost immediately. Okay, so the other couple of issues here is that when you use your secondary storage device as RAM, the data's got to be moved from the secondary storage device to RAM, and something's got to be moved from RAM onto the secondary storage device. So it's a bit of a bottleneck, and it really makes it much slower. So there's two reasons there why it's much slower once you start to use your secondary storage device as RAM. And lastly, it actually damages your hard disk drive because RAM over here is designed to be read and written to many millions of times, whereas a secondary storage device like this isn't designed to be written to so many times. So what occurs is something called disk thrashing, which is this guy here. So disk thrashing, if they get into virtual memory and ask you a sort of long, complex question on that, they'll ask about the damage that it causes. So it's called disk thrashing, which is when you read and write too many times to your read from and write to, and it's the writing that causes the damage to your storage device, your storage medium. Okay, so that's why ideally buy enough RAM in the first place. So that's probably everything you could ever possibly want to know or need to know about secondary storage, about primary storage, sorry. Right, let's jump into this. This is a massive mind map which I'm going through, and I'll give you a copy of this, but this is way too much to take in on a screen. So I'm going to go through each of these individually, okay? So first of all, we've done primary, RAM, ROM. We know what RAM is for. It's to hold all the applications currently in use. We know that ROM is to get the computer started using the bootstrap, and it's got the BIOS, the BIOS, which is a little program that checks to make sure that the operating system can run on the computer, that it's got a fan, that it's got a CPU, that it's got all the requirements, RAM, etc. Okay, so now we're into secondary storage. First question for your first mark on this topic is going to be, why do computers require secondary storage? So they asked this question about a video camera, and you may well have been asked this question. This was a past paper question. Janice has a video camera. Why does the camera require secondary storage? Well, it requires secondary storage because otherwise you can't keep you can't keep the images permanently. You take them and then they just disappear when you take the next one. So that's why they're required to permanently store. Now, you've also got this idea of storage devices and storage medium or media. So if you look over here, this is probably the best way to explain this. These are examples of storage media, and these are examples of storage devices. And the way it works is you need a storage device to read the media or the medium that you're looking at. So for example, if you think about a CD-ROM or a DVD, you need a CD player or a CD rewriter or a VCR for tape, a cassette player for cassettes. What's more complicated is that when you've got a hard disk drive like the one we looked at earlier, the storage, the actual media, is that spinning platter, whereas the storage device is all of the other stuff around it that makes it work. Okay, so you've got that sort of distinction between media, the stuff that you're saving data on, and the device, the thing that's reading and doing the writing. Okay, so that's the sort of distinction between those two. All right. So you've got things like tape drive, which is the device, and you've got the optical disk drive, which is the device, and then you've got magnetic tape, which is the media, and you've got CD, which is the media. I hope that makes sense. It's kind of obvious, but sometimes we think about a hard disk drive as just being one thing, but actually it's two separate entities. It's a device which does all the work, plus a medium on which it actually records it. Okay, good. Okay, so that's the first and most important statement about secondary storage. Okay, so let's think about solid state. Solid state is this guy here. This is the Gucci of storage devices. It tends to be expensive. So this is where you need to know the characteristics of each of these types of storage. So we're going to look at solid state, we're going to look at magnetic, and we're going to look at optical. Optical involves a disc, either a DVD or a CD. Solid state is the latest technology, which is nice and small, no moving parts. It's got a lot going for it, but it's expensive, and it's not yet. The capacity is not quite as great for solid state as it is for magnetic, but it is catching up really quickly, actually, and I think it will probably overtake it in the very near future because there's still a market for both, but solid state will eventually replace it, you would have thought. But data centers are still quite happy to use magnetic because it's so much cheaper. It's just far less expensive. Okay, so we've got a list of the different characteristics. So you can see that the capacity is between 256 gig and 4 terabytes for a solid state drive. I think and this keeps increasing each year. Super quick read-write speeds, the fastest ones. Highly portable, form factor, easy to carry. It's really good for external and internal devices. The other key thing is no moving parts, which means it doesn't generate heat, which means that it doesn't need cooling, which means it requires less electricity, which means if you've got this in your computer, the battery life will be extended. So it's a much, if you think about a magnetic disc, it requires power to make this thing spin, and that generates heat in a fan to cool it down. So there's a lot of things working against magnetic storage. So it is, of course, really expensive, and its use case. What's it for? Long-term storage of programs and data where high performance is required. So say, for example, if you're doing video editing or animation, those would be two use cases, or images, videos, anything like that. It's a really good form of storage for those areas because it's so fast. Okay, it's a really fast read-write speeds. Okay, so it uses non-volatile RAM. There are two different technologies for it. You don't really need to know that, but it's there anyway. It uses non-volatile RAM, and you may have heard of flash memory. A lot of cameras use flash memory. It's still solid state. It's just a slightly different technology. So examples that you should use other than solid state drives are USB memory sticks and SD cards. Okay, those are your examples of secondary of solid state storage. Okay, solid state drives and USB memory sticks. Okay, USB, yes. So if you use those words to describe them, SD cards or USB memory sticks, they accept them. Don't use a company name. They tend not to give you marks for that. So don't talk about, for example, a vacuum cleaner. Don't talk about a Dyson. Talk about a vacuum cleaner or a Hoover. Do you know what I mean? So think about that. Don't just go using the brand name for things. Okay, solid state characteristics. I think we've done this one actually. Reliable levels of security. So this is characteristics of solid state. Is that it's the Gucci for everything. So make sure that you can talk about these in a question. So in terms of characteristics, we looked at this in class and talked about how you can learn these, and we came up with a mnemonic, which is, it's a rather bizarre one, but bizarre ones tend to stick in your head, which is crayon speaking Polish during role play. So obviously each of those words, the first letter in each word stands for one of the 6 characteristics that you have to remember. Okay, so crayons is for capacity, and that's how much it can hold. So for example, 100 gig. Speed is read-write speed. Portability, how easy it is to carry. And think about form factor. The reason form factor is in there is because form factor is a way of saying how big or small it is. So a small form factor or a large form factor. Durability is obviously if dropped. If you drop a solid state drive, you might crack the case a bit, but the memory will probably be okay, probably be intact. If you drop a magnetic hard drive, it might not break, but it would. Put it this way: if you dropped a flash drive on the floor from your camera, you wouldn't even look to check if it was broken because it's so robust. But if you dropped a solid state drive on the floor, you'd probably want to check to see if the thing worked. And then you've got failure time, which is how many hours of use it'll be before you can reasonably expect it to fail. One of the annoyances, which isn't in the exam, but is interesting, is that hard disk drives tend to let you know they're going to fail. You get error messages. It doesn't quite work properly, but it still works. Whereas solid state just goes out like a light. It just stops working, and you can't get it working again. And then price. If you are somebody working as an IT manager, you'll be looking at megabytes or gigabytes per pound. So what does this storage cost me per pound? Sorry, per gigabyte. How much am I paying for each gigabyte? That's one of the ways you might look at it. Okay. So those are your characteristics. All right. So now we're into magnetic. We've done solid state. We've got magnetic to do, and then we need to have a look at optical as well. So we've got 12 people. Do say hello. Right. Magnetic. First of all, the media is magnetized, and if you magnetize something, it means that you've then got either magnetized or not magnetized, and that's how you end up with ones and zeros. And we know that one of the things they're going to ask you to explain at least once is is how do computers work? Computers work by using binary. Why do they use binary? Because computers consist of circuit boards that only have two states, on and off. And binary can very easily represent on and off because it's got two states, one on and zero off. So they will ask you that. And looking forward to characters, sound, and images, they're going to be asking you that. Okay, they'll want to know: do you know why computers use binary? So within optical media, within secondary storage. No, try again. Within magnetic storage and optical, actually, media is split into tracks and sectors. So it's a bit as though they've got circular railway tracks that run around inside the disk, and data is stored in those, and these are also then sectioned off into sectors. All right, so they've got a huge capacity, these magnetic hard disk drives. Anything up to, I think the biggest one's about 100 terabytes. I mean, people don't use them that big generally, but they are the largest, most affordable media. But of course you do have one, which is the absolute monster here, which is a magnetic tape drive. The biggest one I could find in my research for this was 200 terabytes, which is gigantic. A magnetic tape. Well, I've put magnetic tape down here. Actually, this isn't magnetic tape you would use for backup. This is actually an audio tape you'd have put in your Walkman back in the 80s when I was at school playing Madness through that. But it's the same principle. It's the same technology. It's magnetized tape. So if you imagine at school, we run a backup every day, and that involves a magnetic tape that looks a bit like that. It's a bit bigger, and you put it into a device, a tape recorder, and all of the data from Sims, from payroll, etc., all gets backed up daily. It's very slow, but it'll run overnight. So that's what a lot of companies do, is they run a backup overnight. So it's the most ideal format for doing backups. Okay, so characteristics: high capacity. The read-write speeds are fast, but they're not as fast as solid state. It's less expensive than solid state. It's pretty reliable. It's not durable. If you drop it, it breaks. But then again, a lot of these are in desktop computers, so it doesn't matter. You don't generally carry them around, apart from when you move house or move office. They do require more electricity because they've got moving parts. They need more cooling. They can be used for internal and external drives. They don't like being carried around very much. Also, the portability side of it is that if you power them on when they're being moved, they don't like it. They tend to complain quite heavily and develop faults. Use case: long-term storage of data. So in other words, backup, archiving, all that sort of thing. So you could use magnetic storage for that. Magnetic storage compared to tape just takes forever to run the back. Well, it doesn't take forever. It takes a lot longer to run a backup from tape than it does doing it from solid state. Okay, so that is that one. Then we've got optical. So here's an optical disk drive down there. This one could be used to write CDs and to read CDs, DVDs, etc. Okay, and the way it works is this. You don't need to know this, but a laser scans the surface of the disk. It's in tracks and sectors, just like magnetic. The tracks contain lands and pits, little indentations in the CD or the DVD, which again, where there's an indentation, that would be a 0. Where there isn't where there is an indentation, a 1. Where there isn't an indentation, there's a 0. And a sensor, a little laser, scans it, and so it can tell whether it's got those little indentations, little pits in it, little holes, not holes, little dents. Okay, no reflection, 1 reflection, 0. So that's how it works. All right, we're making very good progress. So optical has really fallen out of fashion. Going back 15 years, when you were babies, optical was really, really popular, but there were some problems with it. First of all, durability. Carrying around CDs, they get scratched. You'd know from having games on PlayStation and Xbox that games scratch up really easily, and they don't always work. They're pretty reliable if you look after them. They're incredibly portable. The read-write speeds is slow. It's much slower than a hard disk drive. And if you try to rewrite to a CD, it is painfully slow to the point where no one does it, because it's honestly, rewritable CDs were just an absolute disaster. Surprising how much they can hold. A DVD, 4.7 gig, often enough for a film. A Blu-ray, enough for a film in sort of Ultra HD. So it's good to know how much you can actually store on one of these. And about 170 meg for a CD. So that is the amount of data you could reasonably expect to put onto this kind of media. So then we've got, down here, we've got the three examples, and I fancy they'll do a question on this. You've got CDR here, you've got CD-ROM, CDR, and you've got CDRW, okay? So you've got the ROM, which you buy, it's already been written to. So this, for example, Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, you buy that, you can't write anything to that disc, whatever you do. Then you've got CDRs that you can write to once, okay? And then you've got CDRW that you can write to multiple times, but you wouldn't want to because life is too short and it takes forever to do it, okay? So those are your ROM, your R, and your RW. So that is optical storage, pits and lands, a laser, and that's what you get, but they're not really used anymore. Downloads has taken over massively, so people tend not to use CDs. But it used to be a way of sharing movies, sharing films, sharing playlists, that sort of thing. So use case for optical, obviously down here you've got music, you've got box sets, and you've got games. So if you go and buy a game in a shop, you will get it. You get the physical form, and that will be on some kind of a DVD, because the DVD can hold 4.7 gig. So there you've got some more examples of how they can be used. And again, they may well ask you, they may well give you a scenario and say, Alicia wants to share a game that she's made with a friend. What media would you recommend, what storage device do you recommend she would use and why? So that's why you would say, I would use DVD because DVD can hold 4.7 gig. It's highly portable. As long as you look after it, it's reasonably inexpensive, etc. Okay, so I can see them doing that this time. So make sure that you're happy with your different characteristics and roughly how much these things hold. And very often, it's not about necessarily giving the right answer. It's about being able to explain why you would do it. That always carries more. And quite often you can actually get the answer wrong, but then if you show your understanding of why, you might get some marks for it anyway. Okay, so we have come to the end of that part. Let's see what you know in quiz time. So, fingers on your buzzers first. Or not your buzzers, but what do we think about this? Stores all currently running applications. What do we think? Is it A, B, C, or D? A, B, C, or D? What do we think? We've got ROM, cache, RAM, and virtual memory. Any ideas? Ooh, hello, Dan. We've got a C. Very interesting. We've got Josh, who's also got a C. We've got Nilikshan, who's got a C. And we've got Palak, who's got a C. You are all absolute superstars. Yeah, that was a nice, easy one. Oh, not forgetting LL. Hello, LL. Nice to see you all. That's also outstanding. So let's go on to the next one. You're all superstars. Yeah, that was correct. It is that one. What about this one? This is a sneaky one. Well done, Meme Master. You are a superstar. Very proud of that. Outstanding. So what about this one? Holds frequently used instructions and data. What do we think? Ooh, I'm getting a warning. The stream's current bitrate is lower than the recommended bitrate. Okay. Let's see. What do we think about this one? Oh, we got answers. We've got Palak saying B. We've got Nilikshan saying B. We've got Giggy saying B. We've got Dan saying B. We've got Josh saying B. We've got Mimel saying B. We've got No. Hello, No. Saying B. Shall we see if you are all right? I mean, it's impossible. You could all be wrong. Do you know what, though? These definitions, you're outstanding. These definitions will get you loads and loads of marks in the exam. It's just knowing what these things are. What about this? A type of storage to which CPU has direct access. Is it primary? Is it secondary? Is it virtual? Or is it external storage? What do we think? Oop, Giggy's come back straight away with A. Oh, I can't get to it. You were the first, Giggy. Well done. A, you are outstanding. But we've got, let's have a look. We've got Giggy said A. We've got Dan said A. We've got No said A. We've got Nilikshan said A. We've got Meme Master said A. And we've got Josh who said A. And we've got Lakshare, hi Lakshare, who said A as well. So you are all absolutely outstanding. I think you've done really well here. It is primary storage, okay? Palak said A as well. What about this one here? We have got Palak, you two are a superstar. If I can get your thingy up. There we are. Type of storage used to permanently store data and applications. I mean, this is money for old rope marks, isn't it? As long as you know what these things are. I think it's inside your mind palaces. It's so important that you've got primary and then you've got RAM, ROM. Secondary, you've got optical, magnetic and solid state. And you know why you would use any of these. So what do you think? The type of storage that's used to permanently store data. So Palak has come straight in. She's the fastest with a B. Is she right, though? The fact is, yes, she is. And we've got Dan. We've got. You're all coming in now. We've got Josh who said B. We've got Meme Master who said B. We've got Lakshay who said B. We've got Dan who said B. You are, of course, all absolutely correct. That is outstanding. Right, what about this one? Magnetic storage device with spinning platter and a read-write head. It doesn't help they give these things different names, okay? So what do we think? A magnetic storage device with spinning platter and a read-write head. I think that was for the previous one. No, you were quite correct with that. What about this one, though? What do we think? Giggy said A. An HDD. What do we think? Is A the right answer for this one? Yeah, we've got a lot of A's coming in now. We've got Josh with A, we've got Nilikshan with A, and we've got Dan with A as well. Let's see if you are all correct. You are, of course, A. It's HDD, which is hard disk drive. Okay, storage device. Which is the Gucci? Which is the one with the fastest read-write speeds? And Copper Black has come in with an option that isn't there, which I've put a lot of time for. It could have been E, had I put it in there. Which storage device with the fastest read-write speeds? And don't forget, and by the way, hello Copper Black, nice to see you. Ooh, I think that was, who was fastest here? That was Nilikshan with D, followed by Palak, followed by Meme Master, and Dan, and Giggy, and Josh, and Lakshaya. That is really good. And you are, of course, all absolutely spot on. It is D. What about this one? Storage that holds the operating system when the computer's turned off. Conceptually, it's interesting how many people, Lakshaya, you were absolutely right. Did I say, Josh? Did I say? Yeah, you get it right, and you were right as well. And Madcap, you're absolutely spot on. What about this one? Storage that holds the OS when the computer's turned off. Oh, no, it was after Madcap. So we've got Dan who's saying C. Now, that is an interesting answer, Dan. C. We've got Palak who's saying C. This is good because this is what they call a hinge question, because this demonstrates that Lakshaya is saying C as well. Okay. So it's not ROM. It's not ROM that holds the OS when the computer's turned off. ROM's job, ooh, so now Meme Master saying D. That's not a terrible answer. It's not, it could be external storage, but it's not. In every computer, where does your operating system sit? So this is actually worthwhile just for this, is that your OS sits in, oh, hang on, let's have a look. Nilikshan has said B. No, because when you turn your computer off, RAM is volatile, isn't it? So RAM gets wiped. No has said A. Finally, sorry, that's not very positive. Oh, sorry, no, that's not very positive neither. Let's go for get gone. So it is actually A, okay? So when you, well done, no, that was really good. When you turn your computer off, your operating system is stored on your hard drive. And when you start your computer, ROM checks to make sure that it can be loaded, that the OS can be loaded. And then ROM loads your OS from secondary storage into RAM. Really good I'm glad. Oh, hello, Pyro Ferno. Silly nilly. No, it wasn't the answer, but yeah, there we are. So, right, next. So that was worthwhile just for that. I'm not going to have time to go through all of these, though. HDD. Okay, a storage device with no moving parts. Let's have a quick look at that. So, Pyro Ferno, are you Mohammed Jadama? Yes, it's quite interesting. Oh, hello, Tavia. Thank you for coming. Nice to see you. Oh, Dan's coming with this one. It's D. Storage device with no moving parts. Yeah, it is. It is D. And Josh is absolutely spot on. Meme Master, shame upon you. HDD, hard disk drive, is the one that's got the spinning platter and the read-write head. That's your old-fashioned magnetised disk. So a good one to figure out there. Josh has said D. Nilik Chan has said D. Yeah, you're all absolutely spot on. It is D, okay? So that is the no moving parts. That's why it's the Gucci, because no moving parts requires less electricity, faster read-write speeds, blah, 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 okay? This one, storage medium that has small capacity and is not robust. Small capacity and is not robust. What do we think? Small capacity and is not robust. Robust means it is not, it's easy to break. So which of these has got a small capacity and it's easy to break? Did you notice I've run out of options here and I've written tactical randomly for D? Ooh, Dan has come in with an answer here. Let's see. Do we think Dan is right? Dan is fast. Dan is fast and Dan is accurate. Be like Dan. Josh is also C. That is very good. It is C. Okay. Because it's storage medium, which is small capacity. Yeah, Palak saying C, Nilikshan saying C, Laksher saying C, Palak saying C. You're all spot on. It's optical, right? Excellent. Next, a storage medium with a huge capacity. Which has got the biggest capacity of all of these? You might use it to back up data overnight or to archive. Which of these has the greatest capacity? What do we think about that? The greatest capacity. Oh, crumbs. You're also super fast. C, 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 C. It is indeed C. You're absolutely right. It is C. Uma, welcome, Uma. Do you know what? It's not a bad answer, Uma, because hard disk drive does have a huge capacity, but tape, which is option C, has the biggest capacity of all. It's about 200 terabytes, which is gigantic. It's enough to sort of back up an entire... Yeah, C, absolutely spot on. A, not a terrible answer, though, Uma. Not a terrible answer at all. Right, this one. A storage medium where indentations are made on a reflective disk. What do we think? Tape, DD, SSD, or CD? What do we think? Yeah, what do we reckon it will be? And you know what? They've not done a question on magnetic tape for a while. Not that it means they'll definitely ask one. At least we can be grateful they're not going to ask any stupid questions on floodlights this time. Unbelievable, that last mock. Anyway, hello. We've got everyone's doing D. Pyroferno. Hello, Pyroferno. You are right. You're right, both capital and small. No says D. Dan says D. Uma says D. Josh says D. You are all absolutely spot on. It is, okay. Indentations, optical, okay. What is the maximum capacity of a solid state drive? Now, this is approximate, right? Because actually this keeps, the capacity increases every year. So it's sort of, let's go for approximately. Now, Josh has said, that's the previous one. Nilikshan said B. Dan has said C, so we've got a difference of opinion here. Nilikshan said 4.7 gig. Dan said C, which is 4 terabytes. Josh agrees 4 terabytes. Nilikshan 4 terabytes. Uma 4 terabytes. Pyroferno's going for 100 terabytes. And then he's changed his mind, or her mind. So what do we think? The answer is 4 terabytes. I think it's actually bigger than that now. And it might be somewhere between there and 100. But at the moment, it still holds slightly less than the biggest magnetic hard disk drive, okay? HDD, the D there stands for disk because it spins. Right, what about Blu-ray? Blu-ray. You've got Blu-ray and you've got DVD, which are interesting to, easy to muck up. But Blu-ray uses the same type of disc, but it writes to both sides. So what do we think? Maximum capacity of Blu-ray. And it also, it's very clever the way Blu-ray works. Let's have a look. No. Dan Uma was fast on this one. He said 4.7 gig. It's a good guess. 4.7 gig is actually the capacity of DVD. Blu-ray is bigger. Okay, Josh has gone for D. He's pushed the boat right out there for 500 gig. Palak's come in with C. C is the right answer. Let's give Palak a round of applause. You get a gong. And Pyroferno says A. So there's a bit of work here, guys, is that you don't really know how much these things can hold. Remembering the exact figure is not as important as knowing which one is bigger than the other. So if they ask you to suggest, yeah, you were right, Pyroferno said C, Uma said C, you guys are absolutely spot on. That's what it should have been. It's knowing which is the best use case for a given scenario, okay? What about maximum capacity of magnetic tape? It's going to be big, isn't it? What do we think is the answer here? It's going to be big, 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 big. And also, I think they might tie this into a question about, can you go from, and that was Palak who did, Palak said D, yeah, Palak said D, and Palak can have the sitar transition. Uma has said D, he can have a crumple of paper. I've got random sounds. Pyroferno said D. Yeah, you're obviously spot on. It exactly is D. So let's do that one. Okay, we're almost there. We've gone through these really quickly, actually. Guess the question. This is taken from a GCSE past paper. This is the mark scheme. Meme Master and Josh. Let's have a look. You were correct, and you were correct. Well done. I will give you a sound to cheer you up beyond all belief. There we go. I hope that makes you happy. So what was the question from this? This is the answer. This is what the marker had to mark that year's work. I can't remember what year it was. But what was this question? What could they have been asking to get this question? Notice the phrases they've used. Okay, Meme Master has said, name all storage devices. It is about storage devices, but what type, Meme Master? What sort of, name every type of storage medium? We're definitely in the right place, but what have all of these got in common? What type of storage are they? Now hang on. Yes, portable's good, but what's the technology? And yes, they are all secondary storage devices, but they're all one particular type of storage device. What are they? It's actually a really easy one because the answer's kind of given away in the first line there. So this one was, anyone care to hazard a guess? So we looked at 3 different technologies, didn't we? We looked at optical, we looked at solid state, and we looked at magnetic. What are these? That is my question for you. What have all of these got in common? What do we think? There's a few more coming in. Oh, yes, Uma solid state storage. You are absolutely spot on. That is exactly what it was. And yeah, so they might ask you something as simple as this. Yes, Nalikshan, yes, Gigi. All of these things, they all point to one thing. These are all solid state storage devices, okay? And it was, look at this massive build-up. OCR love to do this. Look at all of this here. Sometimes the scenario is important. Sometimes it's just waffle. The paper you did for your mock, there was way too much of this in my humble opinion as a mere teacher. Because actually the question was, all of this, Kerry wants to buy a new computer. We don't care about Kerry. But actually the question is, give one example of a solid state device. And there were loads of examples of solid state devices there, okay? So that is what that was all about. Nasty one here. So this is VM, which stands for virtual memory, by the way. Virtual memory used when RAM is full. Part of secondary storage used as RAM or virtual memory. Data from RAM moved to secondary storage to make space in RAM. RAM can then be filled with new data. When data in virtual memory is needed, it's moved back to RAM. What was the question? So all of these little chunks here were in the marks. You're looking at the marks. So we had this one here. This one, no, that was wrong. We had this one here as the first part of this would have been a correct answer. this would have been... Ooh, okay, Josh has said, describe the process of virtual memory. Yeah, that's good. That's good. It's not the exact question, but you're not Mystic Meg, but that's pretty blinking close to it. So do you know what? Let's go and look at the answer anyway. Describe the process of virtual memory. Why is virtual memory needed? Oh, Dan, that's excellent. So explain how virtual memory can compensate for the lack of RAM. State the stages of VM. Yeah, we're all along the right lines, aren't we? They picked on this poor girl called Alicia, who kept cropping up in the paper, who seemed to be having computer science problems, yet she knew nothing about computer science at all. Very weird. Anyway, so explain how virtual memory can compensate for the lack of RAM in Alicia's computer. I'm going to finish soon because you guys want to go and have your tea. In fact, we've done that one to death, I think. So let's go on to here. Guess the question. What do we think about this one? Portability, both small in size, portable can easily be moved between Kerry's home and work. Robustness, optical are not robust, easily scratched, damaged whilst being moved. So look at this, and we don't need to guess the question here, but look at how they will give you an example like Kerry or Alicia, and then they'll say which medium would you use, which device would you use, and why. So solid state's got no moving parts, so it's unlikely to break if dropped, but it is quite expensive. So can you see how you've just got to riff off all of this information we've given you, and then you can answer these sorts of questions, okay? So the question was, discuss whether an optical or solid state device is the most appropriate media. Yeah, so listen, we've got, I mean, Josh, you're not wrong here. They give you a scenario and they say, discuss which one she should use, but then bring it back to her scenario. Let's just go back to the actual scenario that they had here, which was about being able to move it. So you can talk about portability, about it breaking, about the capacity. So if they're talking about things like video and images, you want a bigger capacity. If it's about sort of just Word documents and text files, the capacity isn't such an issue. So read between the lines a bit, look at the scenario and see what you need to do. Okay, we have got to the end, which is revision ideas. Make sure you're happy because these absolutely will turn up. What is ROM? What is RAM? What is cache? And it's really interesting that when I asked you the question, where does the operating system reside when the computer's turned off, you didn't know. So it's really useful that we've picked up that, because that's in secondary storage. Because what's secondary storage for? It's to store things permanently. Yeah. So the OS is stored permanently in secondary storage. When it's needed, it's loaded into RAM. And guess what does it? ROM does it. So that's all part of the story, isn't it? And the thing is, learning facts in isolation is actually quite hard. Thank you for coming. It was actually my mess up because I had set this stream to be private, so I talked to myself for the first 6 minutes, but well done for making it. Got 20 here now, which is great. So, virtual memory. Do you know the story of virtual memory? Virtual memory is when RAM is full, so it uses secondary storage instead of RAM. It's much slower, and it ruins your hard drive by something called disk thrashing. Characteristics. By all means, use that mnemonic that I've got, which is crayon speaking Polish during role play, which stands for capacity, speed, portability, durability, reliability, price. B. Yeah. So those are the 6 that you need, and that's why it helps to have that mnemonic to help you. Why is primary storage necessary? We know that now. Why is secondary storage necessary? Parallel processing versus multitasking I covered last time. Have a look at those registers. So for today, take away the fact that the ACC, the accumulator, is just stores numbers for using within the accumulator that might then get used later on. So my advice to you is have a look at the specification and make sure that you have a look through J277 and have a scan through it, and you'll see now that in these 2 weeks we've covered the first 2 massive topics. So what we've done is probably going to be, I don't know, 2 grades worth of work already in the bag. So go away and learn these facts. I will send you the recording of this. I will also send you flashcards that I've made that go with this, and that'll be your homework. I'll send it for everyone this week, and then there'll be a quiz on quizzes. And make sure you've done the quizzes that I set last time. Guys, well done. It is 7 o'clock. You've done an entire hour, so I will see you all next week without fail, and I will send you the right link next time. Okay, bye-bye. Be good. Have fun. See you later.